Greetings, salutations, everybody. Welcome to the newest installment of For Your Consideration, being recorded on Wednesday, November the 16th, 2011. As always, I am your host. My name is John Campea. I'm the senior editor over at AMC Theaters Movie News. Joining me this week via Skype, first of all, he is the associate editor of AMC Movie News, and you probably know him around a lot more as El Guapo, Mr. George Roush. George, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Doing good. And also joining us tonight, we're very pleased to have from Zap to It and a veteran of online film writing, Miss Jenna Busch. Jenna, how you doing?
I'm very good. Happy to be here.
And we're happy to have you here, too. You know what? My headphones got unplugged. Let me fix this. Oh, good. Now I'm good to go. Okay. We got a few things to cover here. But before I do, I usually like to start every episode. I don't do this on purpose. It just kind of ends up being this way. Start every episode with a lamentation, if you will. How stupid are the NBA players? I mean, really, how stupid are the NBA players in an economy? George, you got to help me understand this a bit. In an economy where a lot of people are out of work, people are having a hard time making ends meet. People are taking second and third jobs to get, to pay the rent. NBA players who on average make over $5 million a year, more than any other professional sport in the world, with guaranteed contracts, say that they need to stay out of work to get a fair deal.
Right.
How the hell does it make any sense?
And that's not even counting the sponsorship deals that they get, from sporting goods companies. So it's ridiculous. And the other thing is, does anybody really care anymore? Like the NBA lockout now, the games are locked out until what, the middle of December?
At least, yeah, December 15th.
Who cares? Like we're the ones that keep feeding this. We are the ones that keep feeding this monster. We're the ones that keep buying the $100 tennis shoes and stuff like that. So, a lot of it's our fault too. And the NBA players are in a position to where they can say, well, look, we can ask for whatever we want, and we know eventually you're going to pay it because you're going to want the money on your end. So,
hey, look, as a Canadian, as somebody who went through the NHL lockout a few years ago, where they lost the entire season, I'm going to tell you right now, the players' deal, they ain't going to get what they ask for. The deal's going to get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse until they eventually hit that point where they're going to have no choice but to cave in. It's exactly what happened.
What is it that they're asking for?
I'm not
gobs of money.
Yeah, it's billionaires fighting with millionaires. Basically, they want a bigger percentage of the revenue of the league that they feel they're entitled to. They want then other minor rule changes about whether you have a hard cap or a soft cap, extension, length of contracts, all this kind of stuff. And it's like, you know what, guys? NFL players don't have guaranteed contracts. They can sign a 10-year, $20 million deal and get fired. You have guaranteed contracts. You get paid more than NFL players, and I'm in a sport that's nowhere near as popular as football.
Right.
And they're whining and complaining like little bitches. And look, and maybe they do deserve $500,000 more. Maybe, you know what? Work.
How about for the first year, whatever they get that's above and beyond their salary now, they have to donate to charity and to people who don't have jobs.
I'm all for it. I'm all for it. But anyway, people
I knew there was a reason why I don't watch basketball.
I don't watch a lot of basketball either, to be honest. I just get infuriated when I hear millionaires and billionaires fighting. But anyway, let's talk about some movie stuff. There's a bunch of things on the agenda here. We want to talk a little about Twilight coming out. We're obviously going to talk about the comments Johnny Depp made this past week. Some big Star Trek news coming out. But let's lead off with this. It is generally accepted amongst film fans that Ricky Gervais has done a really funny job hosting the otherwise completely useless Golden Globe Awards. The problem, of course, being that he has pissed a lot of people off. And maybe a fair thing could be said that maybe a few times he went over the line. And so a lot of people at the Golden Globes, the Hollywood Foreign Press, the organization that runs the Golden Globes, last year said, well, he's done. He'll never be back. Ricky Gervais said, well, I'm done there. I will never be back. But lo and behold, today it's been announced that Ricky Gervais is indeed coming back to host the Golden Globes once again. Jenna, let's start with you. Good idea, bad idea, why?
Good idea, because it means I have a reason to watch it. Seriously, Ricky Gervais is so funny. I don't care if he crosses the line. These shows are boring. I mean, let's be honest. I've gone to them. George has gone to one with me. They're incredibly, incredibly boring. If you have somebody like Ricky Gervais on, people are actually going to watch. Like, we saw the Oscars last year and the horrible hosting job that happened there, and it was boring. That was
terrible.
Yeah, I mean, Ricky Gervais is hysterical, and Idiot Abroad is my new favorite show. I'm all for this, absolutely. I don't care what he said before. I'm really glad to see him back.
George?
I think Ricky Gervais has been the funniest guy working in Hollywood for the last few years. I was a fan of his ever since I started watching the British Office. So here's the thing, though. They hire like a British comic. A lot of times they're not going to get the British sense of humor, you know. So and Gervais is very abrupt and he's abrasive, and it's always funny. And it's funny to see a guy bruise some egos in this sensitive little crybaby town. So I don't think there was as much backlash as like they want to make it out to be. I'm sure, you know, a lot of the stars, you know, he like kind of insulted Johnny Depp, but then Johnny Depp, you know, appears on his show later on and does that little thing with him. So, you know, everyone's high-fiving each other. I think it's a great. I think he should host every award show. Honestly,
please.
I think he's brilliant.
I think Gervais is an incredibly funny comedian. I think he's a little hit and miss. To be honest, I think he's a little bit hit and miss. For instance, the film of his that absolutely nobody went to go see, Ghost Town, I thought was a gem. I thought Ghost Town was I thought that was really funny. Then his film, The Invention of Lying, pretty much put that on par with Glitter. That was a horrible movie, and he wasn't funny at all in it. What's that?
The script fell apart on that one.
Yeah, well, the script fell apart, but I mean, everything about it just didn't work. It was a terrible idea.
Did you see Cemetery Junction?
Yes.
Oh,
yes. Good. Yeah, it was pretty good. But like I said, he's hit and miss. I mean, he was terrible in one of my favorite films of the past 10 years, which was Stardust. I didn't think he was very good in that, but then he was a small role. As a stand-up comedian, he's priceless.
Oh my God,
he's absolutely priceless. His British television show, like Extras. I haven't seen an episode of Extras that doesn't leave me spitting up Coke through my nose. But here's where I wonder. So, and I loved watching him on the Golden Globes. I did. But here's where I wonder if this is a wise decision. First of all, I don't think anybody can argue that the reason he is hosting the Oscars again is not because the Hollywood Foreign Press had a change of heart. The reason he is hosting the Oscars again is because NBC is insisting that he hosts the Oscars again. I think they want the ratings. I think they know the only way they're going to get the ratings is to have Ricky Gervais. And on that level, it's brilliant. Where I think this is a little bit risky. And George, you brought up a great point about, you know, hey, I don't think people were as offended as much as we may have perceived. I mean, Johnny Depp did the thing with them. That's a great point, because one of the things that I think where they're running a risk here, Hollywood has always kind of seen the Golden Globes as a very easy excuse to party, just go, have a good time, whatever. With Ricky Gervais hosting, there's a little bit of a risk now for a celebrity in going. They run the risk that there may be some celebs who don't want to go, just in case Ricky Gervais is going to tear them apart on live TV. To which I don't care, but I could see where it might be a little bit of a risk for the Hollywood Foreign Press, and maybe that's not as big of a risk, George, like you were pointing out, as maybe I thought at first. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you know, like I said earlier, you know, he'll crack a joke about Tim Allen, and then he'll go backstage and talk to him. I mean, he's talked about it before on his blog, you know, how it's not as big of a deal as everyone's making it out to be. I think it's a good decision, you know, for the Golden Globes to have him back, because viewers want to see what he's going to say next. It's the Howard Stern effect. I mean, it's controversial, and so people are going to watch it just to see what's going to come out of his mouth. So I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't think they're going to lose a lot of celebrities because it's the Golden Globes. There's going to be very few of them that aren't going to show up.
I agree. Now, while we're on the topic, because once a year I have to go into this. Would you agree, strongly agree, mildly disagree, or strongly disagree with me saying the following? The Golden Globes are the most empty, hollow, useless, and completely meaningless of all the award shows in the award season. George?
I would mildly agree, only for the fact that I think all these award shows are pretty meaningless. So I like the award shows that are a little bit smaller. I think, what is the animation one? The Annie Awards?
The Annies, yeah.
You know, the Annies, you know, which for some reason love DreamWorks movies. I don't know why, but, you know, award shows like that, like the Golden Globes and the Academy Awards are just kind of, I don't know, they just seem so empty. I don't see why they're that big of a deal, but in the industry that we're in, you know, everyone's got to kiss somebody's ass a couple of times a year, so you might as well do it on a big stage.
Jenna?
I'd say mildly agree, because while they might not mean much as far as the voting, it does actually impact people, and you can say Golden Globe Award winner, you know, whoever, when you're talking about someone, and public does sort of respond to that. So in a way, it means more than some of the other awards. You know, the SAG Awards mean something if you're an actor.
Yes.
If you're not, the Golden Globes mean something.
How many? You're a voting member of the Broadcast Film Critics Society.
Yes.
How many? Which I actually consider to be, in importance, the number 2 awards next to the Oscars. How many voting members are there in the Broadcast Film Critics Society?
There's a little over 200.
Okay, a little over 200. This has always been my issue with why. Like, George, I'm on a different level than you on this. I love the Oscars. I celebrate them. I actually think they're incredibly valid and important. But I mean, a lot of people like yourself don't. The reason being is, when you look at the Oscars, it is a base of, I think, 6,000 or so voting members who vote on the Oscar from all disciplines in the filmmaking community. Directors, actors, cinematographers, editors, sound designers, costume designers even. Like, this whole spectrum of people representing every discipline in the art of filmmaking, voting en masse on these awards, you know, to celebrate the year that was in film. The Hollywood Foreign Press, on the other hand, are 62 people who just happen to work for publications outside of the U.S., but they themselves are based in Hollywood, that randomly vote on, let's face it, a self-serving, it's not even to kiss people's asses, it is a self-serving, the one time a year we get to promote the Hollywood Foreign Press show. I mean, look, and I'm sorry, there's no way to you can't sugarcoat this. Last year, Johnny Depp and Angelina Jolie for, what was the name of the film? The Tourist? Tourist. Gets nominated Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Picture. It is a film that had a negative critic rating, which, by the way, their votes counted towards. It's a negatively voted film, and yet they wanted Johnny Depp at their award show. They wanted Angelina Jolie at their award show, so they just kind of put it in there. Giving, I mean, we talk about it every single year, but giving Bill Murray's film that he won Best Actor for, I'm having total brain freeze.
That he was nominated for?
No, that he won for at the Golden Globes.
You're the Golden Globes. Are you talking about Lost in Translation?
Thank you, Lost in Translation.
I love that movie.
Gets nominated for, I think, wins Best Picture in the musical or comedy category? Are you kidding me? No, I'm not questioning its win, but it musical or comedy? Lost in Translation was neither a comedy nor a musical, but I mean, you see these every single year. And it's like they don't even try to hide their irrelevance. It's like they don't even try to hide the inherent corruption of their own little ecosystem. It's an absolute ridiculous. I give more weight to the MTV Movie Awards. I do. I give more weight to that because at least there's some semblance of the public voting or whatever. At least you know what it is and it doesn't pretend to be something that it's not. And every year, the Golden Globes, but I'll say this, every year they also put on probably the most enjoyable show to watch. I don't know how they do it, but I dig watching it. But before we move on to the next topic, anything else you guys want to add on this?
No, that was a pretty good rant on your own there, John.
Yeah, I enjoyed that.
All right, well, let's move on to this then. Speaking of Johnny Depp, and we'll stick on the topic of Depp, the Rum Diary opens up in theaters a couple weeks ago.
Never saw it.
Opens up, well, you ain't the only one, brother. Opens up on over 2,200 screens in North America alone. By any definition, a very wide release. Makes $5 million, a little over $5 million, $5 million and change at the box office on its opening weekend. After 3 weeks, I think it's made somewhere around $12 million. Nobody went to see this film.
Well, didn't it also open up against something big? I'm trying to remember if it opened up against...
Well, there's been nothing huge out in the past while. Here, I'll tell you right now what it opened against. It opened against... Well, it did open against Puss in Boots. No, I think Rum Diary
opened up against... there we go.
It opened up against Puss in Boots. But even Puss in Boots didn't draw a huge audience.
No.
I mean, Puss in Boots only made, I think, somewhere around 38, maybe 40 million opening weekend. So it's not like it took away huge chunks of audience. And let's look, we can't overemphasize this number. 5 million for a Johnny Depp, Aaron Eckhart film. Aaron Eckhart, who you almost would forget was in that film because he's barely in the trailers at all. Johnny Depp comes out and makes this comment. He says basically, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit here, that generally speaking, American audiences don't really flock out to smart films. Smart films. Now, a lot of the websites, movie websites jumped all over this, running the headlines. Johnny Depp says Americans too stupid to understand his movie. Which is taking some liberties with what he said, but it's fair. Because essentially he's saying his movie's too smart. That's why people didn't go to see it. George, right or wrong? Did the reason people not go to see the Rum Diary because it's a smart film and Americans don't generally go to smart films?
No, they didn't see it because I don't think people really cared. It just doesn't look like a very interesting film. It wasn't marketed that great. It just didn't seem like, maybe people are burned out on Johnny Depp. I don't know, but it could have been in a bad release date. I mean, there could have been a lot of factors to it, but it's not because people are too dumb. On the other hand, I did go see Jack and Jill last night, and there was a half theater, and there were a lot of people laughing their ass off, and I sat there just so bored, wondering when I could possibly walk out. So maybe he's right, man. Maybe we're just too stupid. I don't know.
On a side note, I remember I was in the Twilight press junket, and there was a bunch of film journalists there. I'd say a group of about 6 or 7 who had just seen Jack and Jill the day before. And they were having a debate amongst themselves. And here was the debate. The debate was, is Jack and Jill one of the worst films of the year, or is Jack and Jill one of the worst films of all time? Those were the two options they were debating. One side very strongly, no, it's just one of the worst of the year. That's how much people liked it. Anyway, Jenna, let's get these comments on Johnny Depp. Fair, not fair, accurate, inaccurate. What do you think?
I agree with George. Honestly, I do think that American audiences do tend to go for the bigger, splashier things like Transformers and things like that. And very, like, I don't want to trash Twilighters any more than I already have, but this is the stuff that they see. However, I also think that it wasn't marketed very well. I don't think it looked interesting, and I have not seen it, so it might have been wonderful. But the truth is, it didn't. There was nothing about it that drew me. I don't think we're necessarily burned out on Johnny Depp, although perhaps coming on the heels of the last Pirates film, the little bit of the luster was off of him. I don't know. There was nothing that grabbed me from that trailer. Nothing from the commercials.
I think trailer is the key to all this. The problem with Johnny Depp's comments, as I saw them, is that audiences would have had to have seen the film to know it was a smart film.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, I think you guys both nailed it. The marketing was awful. I've seen the trailer 100 times. I couldn't tell you one thing about that movie. I have no idea what that movie's about, other than apparently there's some free rum in the hotel room and he has some mild hallucinations. Other than that, I don't know anything about this film. I don't know who the villain is. I don't know what the plot is. I don't know if Johnny Depp's character is a good guy or a bad guy. I don't even know what time period this film is set in. I know nothing about this film. Why on earth would I want to plop down $15 or $10 or $12, whatever, to go out and watch a film I know nothing about? They botched this, horribly botched this. And I think I think you're both right, too. I do think there's a little bit of Johnny Depp fatigue. I think there's a mixture of Johnny Depp fatigue, and also people love him so much as Jack Sparrow that seeing him outside of one of these either Tim Burton roles or Johnny Depp or Captain Jack Sparrow, I just don't know that they want to see him outside of those types of roles. But I think the bigger thing is, the trailers, man. I mean, these trailers were awful, hideous. You could have made a movie called Johnny Depp Eats Toast and just had 2 hours of Johnny Depp sitting down eating toast. But if you made sure the audience knew exactly what they were getting, you would have had a $7 million opening weekend. And I think that was just the big problem with this. And I don't know, man. It seems a little defensive to me for a guy. And granted, he wasn't coming out and saying Americans are stupid like a lot of the websites ran headlines of. But
I think he's already said that before earlier anyway. So that
yeah.
Is Johnny Depp going to be naked eating toast for 2 hours? Because I would see that.
Okay, now we're up to about $9 million opening weekend. Absolutely. I think he's got to be careful making comments like that. I mean, that just comes across as being sour grapes and defensive. And, dude, just admit it. Either the film was bad, which may or may not be the case, or admit that the marketing was just completely botched. And I think that's the bigger case here. But anyway, let's move on to the next topic here. Jenna, you brought up, I was going to say this till last, but you brought this up. There's a new Twilight film coming out. Now, George and Dennis and I recently discussed the fact that on the same week, Mickey Rourke and the Twilight kids, the lead 3 Twilight kids, were all, for lack of a better term, inducted into having their hand and feet prints into cement in front of the Mann's Chinese Theater, which is a little bit more exclusive than the Hollywood Walk of Fame, which they seem to give out to just about anybody. Now, I made the argument quite passionately and quite correctly that the Twilight kids actually deserved that honor more than Mickey Rourke did, because really Mickey Rourke, what has he done? He's got 1 Oscar nomination. I mean, and that's great. That's more than most actors can ever hope for. But let's face it, he has just as many crappy films and crappy performances. And I can't even begin to tell you how disgusted and embarrassed I was as a Mickey Rourke fan to see the complete lack of effort he gave in Immortals. But that's besides the point. Versus, the Twilight kids who, hey, look, maybe none of them will have careers after the Twilight films are done. But in the same vein that the Star Trek cast got their hands and feet put in because their show was a cultural phenomenon. I think Twilight is a cultural phenomenon. It'll go away eventually, absolutely. And really, I wouldn't have given either of them the cement. I wouldn't have given either of them. But if you have to choose either Mick Rourke or them, I give them that. Let's talk, though, about Twilight. It's the second last film coming out. George, you've had a chance to see this film?
Yeah, I just saw it tonight.
Jenna, have you seen this film yet?
I have not, but I read all the books.
Okay, you've read all the books. I'm going to tell you right now, George, I'll start off with this one. I like this film. I did. I liked this film. I thought, that opening 20 minutes or 25 minutes where the actual wedding happens, I actually forgot for a little while that I was watching a Twilight movie because it was a very quote-unquote human story. I felt pretty charmed by it. I thought it was kind of endearing. I thought it was very sweet. I really got into it. I've actually liked all the stuff the Twilight films have done regarding the werewolves. So there was certainly a lot of that going in there. Certainly has its flaws, but overall I walked out thinking, I kind of liked watching this film. What were your impressions, George?
I agree with you. I mean, I didn't hate the movie. It's certainly the most accessible of the Twilight films.
Yeah, that's an excellent way to put it.
I really enjoyed, I enjoyed the first half with the wedding. There was a lot of humor there. I liked it. Kristen Stewart still annoys me. I don't know why she insists on looking at the ground every 10 seconds.
But she was more personable in this one than she has been in any of the other ones.
Yeah, she's allowed to smile in this one, right?
Yeah.
A little bit, yes.
And then the second half tends to drag on a little bit, but the whole baby, like that birthing scene, absolutely disgusting. Like, I mean, it reminds you very quickly that these are vampires, and I was like, holy crap, they're getting away with quite a bit for a PG-13 movie. Like, I was getting lightheaded. I was like, oh my god, this is like too much blood. Like, there's blood everywhere in this damn thing. So,
well, it's a C-section by tooth.
Yeah, you know what? I don't like. It was pretty gross. Yeah, I can see heads and arms getting chopped off all day long, but if a guy's got to deliver a baby via his mouth, like I'm gonna get grossed out. Yeah.
Yeah, that was, and I was interviewing Ashley Greene and Jackson Rathbone, who play Alice and Jasper in the films, and Jackson raised a good point. He goes, there is a little bit more in this Twilight film than the other ones. There's a little bit more humor. There's this, but then he brought up, he goes, towards the end of the film, it actually kind of becomes a horror film.
Yeah.
And I thought I didn't think of it that way when I was watching it, but the visual effects, for people who've read the books, and I have not, but you'll know what I'm talking about. The visual effects as the film progresses on Bella, as she gets weaker and weaker and skinnier, it was done so perfectly and so subtly that it took about 15 minutes into it that before I realized, wait a minute, I think they're like, her shoulders are getting a little bit bony. Mm-hmm. Oh, I think her knees are getting kind of bony. And then it gets worse and worse. And by the time that whole birthing scene came around, I mean, it was disturbing.
She's being eaten from the inside out.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's kind of gross. I don't know if maybe, now obviously I haven't seen this one yet, and I'm perfectly willing to like it. It's just that I know what happens in the second part and the magic vampire baby. So I don't know. There's just something about these films where you've got an 18-year-old who goes into complete depression when her boyfriend leaves and then blows off someone who's really nice to her, and then gets married.
I call that high school, Jenna, by the way. I call that high school. But then
gets married at 18, says, I don't want to go to college because all I want to do is be with you. and then has a magic vampire baby that saves the day. So,
look, we're not arguing.
And I have a problem with this.
Yeah, I mean, I will admit, yes, Bella's pretty retarded,
Yeah.
So she's not a very logical human being.
Yeah.
A lot of the things... Here's the thing, though, too. Like, a lot of the things that Jacob says in the film, they don't really make sense. The guy's fueled by emotion, but you tend to forget, too, he's actually a teenager. He's not like Edward, who's like 100-something years old, and is like, he's lived long enough to be the total bore that he is. So with I really enjoyed all the scenes with Taylor Lautner because he brought a different energy every time he was on screen. So I enjoyed his interaction with Bella and like his bluntness, with that character because he's just fueled by emotion. So it was kind of it really helped out with the story, I think, whenever he came on screen.
I got to say this. I got to throw this in here. And George, I knowing you, I'm going to guess this probably went through your head too at some point. I like Robert Pattinson. I've had a chance to meet him a few times. He's he's very charming.
Yeah,
he's very likable. But dude, you are supposed to be this ancient, powerful, heartthrob vampire. You got a movie coming out where you're going to have to take your shirt off. Lift a weight.
Yeah.
Don't even lift a lot. Lift a weight. And I'm sorry. I am a heterosexual male, but were I attracted to men, and you put Robert Pattinson side by side with Taylor Lautner, I don't know how there's any decision to be made there. I mean, it was actually a little disturbing seeing how I'm sorry, Robert Pattinson, especially next to Taylor Lautner, kind of looks a little sickly.
Well, there was that one scene where Edward and Bella are in the water together on their honeymoon, and I actually got kind of confused as to which one was which when they took her from behind. So if she didn't have that longer hair, it would have looked like two chicks in the water making out.
And you would have hated that.
That would have been terrible. Yeah, by moonlight.
But anyway, overall, hey, look, I still don't get it. I still don't get the huge, passionate following that Twilight gets. I also don't get the massive hate on that a lot of people have for it. I think they're okay movies. I think one or two of them have been bad. I think one or two of them have been okay. To me, they're just movies that will come and go and whatever. But yeah, man, people are passionate one way or the other. They either hate these films or they will model their lives after them. I don't get either extreme.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, I don't enjoy. None of this Twilight stuff makes any sense to me. Like, it's just all kind of weird and kind of bullshit. But the fans love it, and they're some of the most passionate people about the books and the movies. And a lot of them are just they're just really fun kids to talk to. And it's like, I kind
You
of
interviewed a lot of them at Comic-Con, actually, this past year. I've been interviewing
a lot of them for years, actually. Like, I've interacted with a lot of them over Twitter and from stories I've done. And, you know, whether they like me or they hate me, a lot of them, I really enjoy talking to them because I can see the passion that they have for the films, and anybody that's that passionate about films, you know, gets a thumbs up in my book, so.
Yeah, no, I have to agree. I mean, as much as I dislike the films, the fans are great. I actually hosted a live event in San Diego when the third film came out, and people camped out for days, and I went to talk to all of them. I mean, I'm sort of like that with sci-fi things, and so whether or not I like what you like, if you're that passionate about it, you have to respect that.
Now, Jenna, you actually moderated, a couple of panels, but you moderated a panel at Comic-Con this past year on. You have to remind me, women in film. What was that? What was that panel?
Oh, it was Girls Gone Genre. So it was Lita Kalogridis, Jane Espenson, Marty Noxon. So I mean, it was Gail Ann Hurd and Marjorie Liu. So it was women who are writing in the genre. Right,
and it's, you know, on that level too, you have, you know, these books written by this incredibly now powerful woman in Hollywood, with screenplays, at least for one or two of them, adapted by a female screenplay writer, and one of them even directed by a female director for one of the films, the first one, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. It's I don't know if that has anything to do with it, or maybe why young girls connect to it so well. I don't know, but there is something in the water that has made Twilight ridiculously popular. But anyway,
I'll tell you what it is.
I'll
tell you what it is. It's a guy being obsessed with you. And it's a very, very hot guy who's obsessed with you and who makes you special. Well, two guys, yeah, but it starts off with one guy. But it's somebody who makes you feel special because they're out of the ordinary, and it takes you out of your normal life and puts you on this pedestal and makes you this special, special thing that somebody absolutely adores. That's what it is.
All right. And of course, if the guy's not hot, then she's calling the police for the guy sneaking into her bedroom at night. But if you're hot, then it's sweet.
Then it's glittery.
Okay, let's move on to this last thing here.
She wouldn't like the fat guy with the goatee?
Maybe
comic book guy from The
Simpsons? Too. We'll see.
Let's move on to this last thing. Finally, we've talked about this months ago about, you know, we talked about some time ago. J.J. Abrams came out. There's a piece of news that came out that said, you know, J.J. Abrams says he won't do another Star Trek until it's ready. And everybody, pretending like they knew something, jumped up and down saying, see the integrity J.J. Abrams has? Not doing it till it's ready. Dude, it's been years. It's been years. Exactly how hard is it to get something ready, to get the story? He just said until the story's ready. How long does it take to get a story ready? Well, apparently they're finally at a point where maybe they're ready to go, because they announced today, or at least sources are announcing today, that Star Trek, the sequel to J.J. Abrams' film, with J.J. still at the helm, will go into production in January for a May 2013 release. George, let's start with you again. What took this thing so long to get moving, and your thoughts on it finally getting into production?
Well, they started shooting the first film in 2007, I believe. So, yeah, it's been quite a while. I think they wanted to take a break from it and work on other projects. You know, JJ wanted to do Super 8 and stuff like that. And plus, you've got to work out the schedule with all of the actors at the same time to get them together to do the film, because after the first Star Trek, they all blew up. So they've all immediately...
No, they didn't.
Well, I mean, Chris Pine kind of did.
What has Chris Pine done? I mean, he did Unstoppable, which I thought was great.
It was. And yeah, he did Unstoppable, and then.
But that was out a year ago, which means he shot it 2 years ago.
Shooting some other stuff. He's got that one movie, the Assassin movie, where he plays a hitman, coming out with Tom Hardy. So he was also shooting that. So and what's her face, who did Columbiana, Zoe Saldana. I mean, she's been doing projects.
She's always busy. Yeah, she's always busy. One of the things I noticed, actually, we were talking today. One of the people who really did not blow up was Spock.
Yeah.
You'd think he was pretty popular. He was a popular character on Heroes. People loved him on Heroes, which I think ultimately what got him the role as Spock. He gets Spock, and nothing. Like, not a damn thing. This guy is talented. He's got a great look. He has obviously had lots of popularity and some momentum going by playing Spock in the first Star Trek, which, by the way, is awesome. And just nothing.
I don't know. I thought he was, Jenna, wasn't he working on some stuff?
He was, actually. I'm trying to remember what it was, but he was working on some things. I think so.
Yeah, he was doing TV. And, Simon Pegg, he was working on Paul. And, plus you've got Orci and Kurtzman are always so busy because they've got like 50 projects in the pipeline. So once they got their script done, and Orci said recently that, the script's been finished for a little while. They're working on the third draft now. And then I think they were just waiting for all the pieces to come together so they can start their production date and then get their budget from Paramount on what they can spend. So I'm looking forward to it, man. I'm really curious to see what the story is and what they're going to do with it going forward. Because now that we've got all of the origin crap out of the way, we can just dive right in and get into a nice science fiction story. So we'll see.
Jenna, your thoughts?
I actually agree. I'm really excited for this film, but I don't particularly care how long it took to get there. Like, I mean, if it was 10 years, I'd be a little pissed, but I actually don't mind. I mean, it's not like there aren't any other movies out. And I'm kind of in the boat where I'd rather see it be a good movie than get it rushed out because the studio wants to make money off of it. I love Star Trek, and so I don't want to see a crappy rushed version of it. I have no problem with it taking that long. Honestly, not at all. I'm with you too in the sense that I don't want them to rush. But rushing is the movie has a huge opening weekend, them announcing they're going into production a month later for a release date that's 1 year from the release date of the last one. To me, that's rushing. By the time this thing comes out in theaters, it will have been 4 years. I just think there's a huge chunk of time that you could have cut off from this process and still not called it rushing. And as a guy, now I'm saying this, I'm sounding like I'm poo-pooing on the idea of Star Trek. My dissatisfaction with this whole scenario comes from the fact that I thought that first Star Trek was brilliant. And I made the argument, I thought it should have been nominated in that 10th spot. Because remember, they had 10 nominees that year. I made a case that I thought it should have had the 10th spot for Best Film of the Year. I thought it was a better film than District 9. I thought it definitely deserved an Oscar nomination over The Blind Side. I thought there were 2 or 3 films on that list that could have been bumped out of the way for a start. I thought it was great. And I preached for 2 years about how that movie was going to suck. And then I went in and saw it and I had to eat my words because I thought it was brilliant. And I think you've got a finite window. Because this is one of these...
No, not at all.
I don't think so. I mean...
Not for a property like Star Trek. No, you don't.
But I mean, you could make 20 of these films. I think you could make 20 Star Trek films with this cast, but you can't put them out every 4 years. Because
you can. I mean,
I don't think so.
Like that for a long time. Look at the gap between Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back. A lot of these things are like 3-4 years. If you look back in history with sequels, so it's really not that big of a window compared to the theatrical release time to the DVD time. And then when they go in to shoot the next one. So, there's 3 years right there, and then the 4th year. So
I think it's a different era, though. That you bring up Star Trek, and it's a good point, but I think it's a different era. I mean, you're talking about a time when it did take a lot longer to make films back when, especially Star Wars kind of films back in the day. But also you're talking about an era when, maybe 150, 170 wide release films got released in a year. It's a different era now. I mean, we've got like 4 or 5.
Look at a movie like Taken. When did Taken come out? 2009? Was it January 2009?
I think so.
Or 2010. 2009, 2010, one of those two, yeah.
2009. So you're looking at the next one's going to come out next year. That's 3 years. And that's just like Liam Neeson. I mean, that's just like the one big player and then the few of the directors and supporting players. I mean, this is Star Trek with a huge cast. Huge, the producers that are behind it, J.J. Abrams.
Huge fan base.
The writers that are behind it. So there's a lot of hands, in this in this giant pie. So I mean, yeah, it's going to take a little while if you got to bring all these guys together.
I just think I think they lost an opportunity here with momentum. I think they lost. I don't think they had to go into production the very next week, but I think there's something to be said about. Yeah, we're talking years ago now, and I thought maybe like you start production this last year, when when you could still feed off that buzz a little bit. You're closer to when the DVD was released. You could build on that hype, and let's as much as I loved it, and as much as we all call it a hit, and it was a hit. Domestically, it made about $230 million domestically. Big film. But not a monster film, not a monster hit. I think worldwide it made about 380 or 370. Yeah. But anyway, I mean, we're all happy that it's getting made.
The previous one that came out before it was Nemesis, and everyone hated that one. And this is a total reboot, and look what they did with it. So
that's true. That's a good point.
That kind of crowd with a brand new cast that nobody knew anything about.
Yeah.
I don't think this 4-year window is going to really hurt them at all. I mean, I
don't think it is either, honestly.
Yeah, right, Jenna? I mean, I think people are just going to come back even stronger now because they're going to want to see more.
Oh, totally. I mean, it's Star Trek, so it's that the fan base is sort of built in. Another thing is we also don't know how much pre-production was actually done before they made this announcement. So they might be partway in. The other thing is Abrams was doing some TV shows that didn't exactly do well, so he was kind of busy.
Yeah, and you know what? For me, I still think, look, I don't know that anybody could have done what J.J. Abrams did with this. Because Star Trek, let's face it, it wasn't a hurting franchise. It was a dead franchise. Absolutely dead. J.J. Abrams comes along and he resurrects it, breathes life into it. I don't know that anybody else could have done as good of a job as he did.
It wasn't dead. They just didn't know what to do with it.
Dude, I don't know, man. When you have...
Dead. Star Trek.
Oh, it was dead. Because you couldn't point to me one new fan of Star Trek they probably added in the past 7 years. Not a new fan. But Star Wars fans are still adding to it. There's still people becoming Matrix fans today, but not one new Star. It was literally a franchise whose fan base was dying off, literally dying off. But JJ, I think he pulled off a water into wine miracle the way he did that, and just flawless. I can't wait to see what he does. I'm super excited they're doing it. Like I said, my one big criticism is that they should have done it sooner. But anyway, that's just me. You guys raised some very valid points.
The one thing that I hope that they do with this sequel is they don't decorate the interior of the Enterprise like it was from IKEA, because it really annoyed me in the first movie, man. It looked terrible, the interior, so hopefully they change that a little bit.
Oh, I will say this, though, and I know a lot of people are against it. I know a lot of people are saying they better not do this. I don't care. I'll be a populist. I'm all over the bandwagon of make Khan the fucking villain in this film. I love that character. There's so much you could do with it. There's so much you could say about the events of the first Star Trek film, interrupting, the hibernation flight path of Khan and his followers that brings him out of hibernation earlier. Blah. So many things you could do. I think the single richest villain character Star Trek has ever had. I think, you waited till the second Batman film to have Joker, fine. You wait till the second Star Trek film to have Khan, fine. Use Khan. That's how I feel about it. Are you guys with me on that, or do you think Khan is something they should stay away from?
Go ahead, Jen.
I don't mind. I mean, honestly, I don't mind either way. If it's done well, it's done well no matter what they do. No matter who they use. So, if you wanna. It really doesn't matter. If it's a well-done villain, I'm fine with it. I love Khan. I have been known to yell Khan before. I'm totally fine with it. I don't think it's something where you can't touch it. I don't think anything's untouchable if it's done well.
And let's you talk about if the villain's done well. Let's say it. The one big weakness of the first Star Trek film was a very, very, no matter who the performer was, it was a very weak villain. I thought Nero was a pretty weak villain. Anyway, George, your thoughts on them possibly using Khan? Should they or shouldn't they?
Well, they're not going to use Harry Mudd, so yeah, I would love to see Khan.
That dude's still alive too, isn't he? Isn't the actor who played him still alive?
I don't know. I think so. It'd be
Bring
kind of
him
cool
back.
Little Mudd cameo. But I would love to see a new version of Khan. I think that would actually be really cool.
Javier Bardem as Khan.
Who knows? I mean, he's rumored, so I don't know. Or just have, the Klingons. Just do a classic Klingon enemy. I mean, why not? You can't go wrong with that either. So, and you know what? There's also the third option where they could just have something totally different. So, we're not going to know yet for a while. So.
All right, guys. Well, listen, I have no idea how long we've been going. I know we've gone over time, but I've just enjoyed this so much. Thanks so much. Guys, we're going to sign off for now. Thank you for watching this episode of For Your Consideration. Don't forget you can be following us on our Facebook page. Please jump over there and like us at facebook.com/FYC podcast. You can also follow us on Twitter at the same twitter.com/ or at FYC podcast. You can follow George at
El Guapo1 on Twitter.
And you can follow Jenna Busch at
Jenna Busch, and it's BUSCH, like the beer, not the president.
and you can follow me at John Campea anytime, all the time. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to join us next time. And until then, bye-bye.